and they just traded the king for a governor. That's all. In North Carolina, the governor was the royal governor, and there were two governors. There was a common people's governor, and there was a royal governor. And then when after 1776, the Governor Caswell, what he did is he was the royal governor, and he became the governor of the state of North Carolina. And in the Halifax reserves, they had said to the people that they could no longer protect the people. They would have to go it on their own, and therefore the common governor at the time, he just disappeared. You know, he ceased to be any functional at all. Now, what the Governor Caswell, the royal governor, did, the first thing he did was he eliminated the quitrent tax. See, the king taxed every property by a quitrent, a certain amount. It wasn't based on valuation. And the first thing that Governor Caswell did, and I imagine every other state did it, he eliminated the quitrent tax and added an ad valorem tax, which means now they would set the price of the property and charge a tax accordingly. Not just, well, here's a building, it's got 5 windows, and we're going to charge $10 tax. Now they got, well, here's a building, it's got 5 windows and 2 fireplaces, and we're going to say that that is a value of $1,000, and we're going to have a mill rate and place it on every $1,000. That's what we have today. Now, if, in fact, we were supposed to be free, they would eliminate the quitrent tax, and people would not have to pay a property tax.
Well, I got a couple of questions I'd like to ask you right now.
Sure.
And if we do digress, just remember where you left off. I don't think so, but I've got to ask you these while they're up in the forehead of my very small brain.
Okay.
It was my thought, looking at the Treaty of Paris and just what happened with England's military involvement with the colonists. Would I be right in what I did in assuming that they probably said, you know, the king, whatever, the Rothschild said, listen, okay, guys, right, come on back with the soldiers when you can, and let's not shed blood anymore. I tell you what, you guys are a business enterprise of the crown, and
right.
We'll get you back financially, enough with shedding blood, so go ahead and think what you want. We'll catch you, financially. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's why they stayed here, and they never, now in war, and you can equate this, a lot of people can probably equate this, that were alive, were young at the time during World War II, like I was. When MacArthur went over and signed the declaration of war, I mean not the declaration, the peace, after the atomic bombs were dropped, MacArthur dictated all the parameters of that treaty of peace between Japan and the United States. It was quite the opposite with the king. The king dictated everything in that treaty of peace of 1783.
Right, that's right.
And therefore he still was the arch treasurer of the United States, and it says so right in there. But that's basically
okay.
What you were saying.
All right, let me ask you this now. Let's say hypothetically, some territory, let's just say within the contiguous 48 states, didn't become a state.
Right.
Maybe it was part of the acquisition from Spain. Could those residents have been free of the same situation that the state's residents were free of, or would they have gotten hooked in too, or is that pretty much an obscure question?
You mean like Spain and Louisiana?
Well, I'm just saying if the territory existed, just forgetting District of Columbia right now.
Okay.
Was it statehood that roped? I guess this is what asking it another way. Did statehood hook the citizens of that state into this whole business relationship with the crown?
Yeah, and the way it is, if you logically think about it, okay, the king owned all the property, all the land. The people were free, all right? The crown was owed money by the king. So the crown had a lien on all the property. anything the king owned. Okay, and therefore Virginia and Maryland were states. There was no territory like the United States. They banged around from New York to Philadelphia and a few other towns, and they didn't have any place to set. So Congress, that's actually the United States. If you look at it, Congress is nothing more than the United States. And we always see in Congress assembled, the United States in Congress assembled. And that means, basically, whenever Congress assembled, that's the United States. And they're assembled all the time now. Well, but what it is all the land, the people were on the land. They were only tenants. They didn't own the land at all. There can be no allodial land owned in the United States because it's still owned by the crown through the king, because he couldn't transfer any land because of the heirs, and there will always be an office found under the reign of the king.
Let me hold you there for a second. David Wilbur Johnson has been on to speak to property rights, and he chronicled that in some cases people, when they're in a dispute, whether it's with a town or whatever, over their land, that they can go back to the original treaties which hold precedence. And of course, beyond England, you had treaties with the Dutch, with the Spanish, with the French, and even with the Russians, considering parts of California.
Yeah.
Now, do you abide with that as well?
Well, that would appear to be, but when the colonies and everything became under the rule of the United States, remember, the crown operated in every one of those countries: France, China,
Spain,
Spain, Italy. Didn't matter. The crown, the banks rule everything in the world, and based on that, we was doing this back in the 80s and going back to land patents and land grants and William Penn in Pennsylvania and so on and so forth. But he was still granted that, the same as the seven proprietors, where the king gave the seven proprietors every piece of land that they could operate with in this country. And then when he wanted it back, everybody but Lord Granville, and the county I happen to live in is Granville County, named after him, he refused to give it back. When the war ended, the 1776 war ended, they confiscated, the governor in North Carolina, Caswell, confiscated that land and returned it back to the king. Now, wait a minute. If this is supposed to be a free country and the governor is supposed to be for the people, what's he doing confiscating Granville, Lord Granville's land, and turning it back over to the crown?
Well, there's something else that keeps popping up all the time, too, and it did with Johnson, and as you just mentioned, and if we can address that, and that is that famous year, 1066, when William Hastings, or William the Conqueror, invaded, I guess, England, right? That would be right?
Yes, he did. And the people of England owned their own land. There was no such thing as what we have today, where you don't own your land. They actually owned their land. William the Conqueror come in and took the land by conquest.
Well, what Johnson said, I'll throw out to you, and please respond to it. It seemed to me that what he said was that in 1066, and because of that invasion, that was the end of allodial land owned by the peasants.
That's right.
And that carried over to here, did it not?
Yes, it did.
Okay. And I don't think that Johnson would argue that either. I'm just trying to find, the resonating points here, and just to bolster both your not arguments, but your information.
Yeah.
So
it's very confusing, unless you're a researcher like us. I imagine he's a pretty good researcher.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know the man, but you just can't pick up what people say and carry it down through a myth, through history as it's been done. And so many people out there, I'm going to use the word patriot loosely, they pick up on what was before them, and it goes on back, and it's like the little kid, the teacher tells a little kid in the first row a little story, and by the time it gets around to all the 30 kids in the room, and the last kid recites the same story, she don't know what the kid's talking about. You know
It's
what I mean?
true, yeah.
The word of mouth and everything goes down.
Yep.
And
well, how would you think, or how do you know, the strange territory of Puerto Rico is regarded by the Crown?
you mean the island Puerto Rico is? Well, that was taken up by the United States in 1970.
What, the status of Puerto Rico?
Yeah, that was 1898 is when Spain gave it up.
Right. Oh, yeah, we're forced to.
Yeah.
The first.
In fact, that was the Spanish-American War, and my uncle, we buried him on the day that Kennedy was shot. That's how I remember. It's also my wife's birthday. So he fought in that Spanish-American War also.